somewhere, at some point in time, we fell in love. I really don't know when. Like all relationships, it seemed to happen in the blink of an eye. From the blur of whatever we were doing before to a passionate, unquestioning love for the modern, handsome, beautiful interface of the moment. Apps. Maybe it was these gently whispered sweet nothings from all the way back in 2009. What's great about the iPhone is that if you want to check snow conditions on the mountain, there's an app for that. The commercial continued. Our pulses quickened. And if you want to check exactly where you park the car, don't tease me. We all know how to end that phrase. 6 beautiful trademark words that may have unintentionally fenced in this generation's limitations on technological creativity. There's an app for that. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is 99 cents to download. Name a news source. Odds are they have a recent article, column, or perhaps an entire section devoted to swooning over the latest apps. It may be because reporters want to showcase that they're hip. Yeah, we know apps. But it's probably because they're also love-drunk with touchscreen oxytocin. An app, just by being an app, doesn't guarantee that it produces anything of merit to anyone anywhere. But please, shh. We must defend our loved one's honor. An app's creation is told of gospel, of wonder, and of miracle. We're blessed that someone wrote working code that somehow illuminated the dark, mythical path to Apple or Google's app catalog. The New York Times featured an App of the Week and had a reoccurring App Smart Extra column with heart-throbbing titles like A Weather App That Works. And during the financial crisis, the New York Times featured a Bloomberg app as App of the Week because it revealed basic stock market data. Perhaps you too poured a glass of Chablis and queued up Norah Jones to set the mood as you reread the touching USA Today piece, 5 new apps that will change your life. My heart melts at that opening line, apps, apps, and more apps, truly life-changing. Or maybe you're thinking, oh, I'll just turn on Talking Heads CNN and forget about my app Muse. Think again, my friend. Here are real CNN headlines. Stuck in snow? There's an app for that. Remote sex? There's an app for that. No toilet paper? There's an app for that. Can't sleep? There's an app for that. Passover? There's an app for that. Heart attack? There's an app for that. Save the whales? There's an app for that. Giving birth? There's an app for that. Dead? There's an app for that. I want to start out the lecture portion by looking at a picture of a toaster. This is actually a toaster from the late 1940s, a time in which we were obsessed with fast-moving things and aerodynamic forms, and so we made an aerodynamic toaster. When you look at everyday objects, I think they're reflections of larger trends. At that moment in time, we were obsessed with things like streamlined trains, and so we made streamline irons. We love things like the shape of cruise ships, so we made apartment complexes that look like them. That's no cruise ship. That's my apartment complex. Today, we're obsessed with gadgets and smartphones and screens and even failed technology like 3D television. So we do things like make this. This is Crest 3D whitening toothpaste. It's the #1 selling toothpaste in the United States. And unlike all the other toothpaste on the market, this one is 3D. This is one of the top-selling sunglasses on Amazon. Promises you HD vision. This is how a mattress company today advertises for a mattress. Not with a picture of a mattress, but with a woman sleeping on top of a fully charged battery icon. Doritos today doesn't make potato chips. They 3D print them. These everyday objects are reflections of how technology is having such a huge impact on our lives. I mean, I think if you want to look at a little more empirical data, one of the interesting things is to look at what young people are studying. And more people are choosing to study things related to technology. At well-rounded universities like Stanford that used to be known for their psychology program, it's become more of a computer science school. At art schools across the world, there's less and less interest in graphic design and a greater interest in interaction design. We're seeing all this excitement about tech, all this momentum, all this talent that's here in this room and that's coming. But so often, we do something unfortunate. We set a sort of low bar of what we could achieve. Because no matter what the problem, we so often in technology have the same answer. Question: how do you make a better car? Above is one of the earliest patent drawings for an automobile. The technologists of the day solved a real problem with transportation. And as a result, the car changed the way we live, the way our cities are built, who and what we can see, and when and where we can see them. So today, utilizing the amazing technological progress we've made in the over 100 years since, what technique have modern technologists used to improve the car? Answer: slap an interface on it. Who would need to look at the road while driving? Leaning over to touch a screen is so much more fun. Tesla is one of the most innovative companies in the world. That's why they've got a 17-inch touchscreen center console. Sure, there are some haters. Some lost soul, The Verge wrote, "I don't want a web browser in my car, and more importantly, I don't want the drivers around me to have one." But consider scroll bars in your center console. I know, amazing. Question: how do you make a better trash can? Answer: slap an interface on it. Hope you got this obvious one. You can make a better trash can by turning it into a $47,000 LCD recycling bin, so you can see if it's raining outside when you're standing outside in the rain. 100 of these incredible bins were installed in London just before the 2012 Olympic Games to help the city show off its futuristic wonders. And why not? Screens are so futuristic. Question: how do you make a better restaurant? Answer: slap an interface on it. In the US, customer service saviors like Chili's and Applebee's have installed these kinds of touchscreen ordering systems in thousands of restaurants across the country to replace frightening conversations with another person. A Chili's senior vice president once told the Wall Street Journal that the interfaces get people to buy more stuff, like coffee and desserts that flash on the screen. That's obviously a great thing for America's diet, and since I'm basically just staring at my phone the whole time while dining with my friends anyways, what's the harm of another screen on the table? This is a set of job listings from some of the top technology companies. You'll see something unusual about these job listings. They advertise for these UX/UI designers. But user experience design and user interface design are two very different things. User interface design is about all the components, all the elements that go on a screen, about composing them in a visually compelling way, and it's an important job. But it's different than thinking about user experience, where you're thinking about how to solve larger problems for customers, trying to understand them. When we confuse the two, solving problems and making screens, we make it someone's job to solve problems with screens. But good UX, good experience design isn't a set of good screens. It's a good experience. There's a lot of confusion about the purpose of design today in technology. Part of it is because we have a lot of these poor metrics that we evaluate design by. Things like, how many clicks did you generate? How addicted did you get someone to your service? How hooked? Instead of what design is really about, which is about creating delight through elegance and efficiency, loyalty by building a product that creates value in someone's life. Earlier this year, The Verge had a piece called The Engineers of Addiction. It's about how Silicon Valley companies are taking inspiration from Las Vegas gambling machines that have created addiction. I read about this a little bit in the book that I'm reading from called Addiction UX. It's a perversion of our field where we're here to get people addicted to technology instead of trying to solve problems meaningfully. As a result, our output is more and more screen time for more and more people. In the US, children look at a screen for about 2 hours a day. Teenagers, who are mostly in school, look at a screen for about 7.5 hours a day. And adults, we look at a screen on average over 8 hours every day. Of course, there are consequences to this kind of screen-based thinking. We're constantly distracted from friends and family. The Center of Disease Control in the US estimates that 1,000 people every day get injured in a car accident because someone's distracted by a screen while driving. The color temperature of our screens mimics midday. It does this to produce these deep blacks and bright whites. But when you look at those vibrant colors at night, it's been scientifically proven to throw off our sleep cycle. Earlier this year, WNYC, the US's largest public radio affiliate, had a series called Bored and Brilliant. It was about how studies show the moments of boredom in our life, when we're in the shower, in the car, on the train, the bus. It's during those moments that we have our most creative and original thoughts. With all these startups and big companies trying to solve for micro-boredom, we have less and less time in which we're bored. We have less and less creativity happening in the world. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are good things about screens. These slides wouldn't exist if it wasn't for screens. You may not be here if it wasn't for the information delivered to you through screens. But I think there's a lot we can do to reduce the amount of screen time that's necessary in our lives. It wasn't that long ago that our lives were filled with paper, and there were some people who dreamed of a paperless world. Now, instead, our lives are filled with screens, and I think we should dream of a screenless world. I actually think that the best graphical user interface is no graphical user interface, and so I wrote this book about it, which I'm reading from today. It talks about how and why and commentary about where we can go. When the design process for new technology begins, it often starts brilliantly. What's good about that? An elderly senior citizen is asked about her daily foot rub. The path is fantastic. A painter watching his paint dry is looked at with genuine curiosities, techniques, and typical processes, well noted. It's journalistic, qualitative, without fail, enlightening. It's a practice that can unmask new opportunities, uncover unknown yet common problems, illuminate regular routines, and find those things that are actually important to the end customer. And just a few weeks of these open-minded observations and conversations with customers is a marvelous first step that many smart people in technology use today to create something useful. But then the creativity stops. The amazing stack of unique problems is forgotten. The rich pile of specific insights disappears. Instead, from the unique emerges the expected, organic morphed into mechanical. One of a kind turns into a square peg for a square hole because screens come before problems. We do this, we draw a rectangle. We do it again and again and again, no matter the client, the industry, the problem we're trying to solve. The creative process of developing technological solutions repeats the lazy act of drawing a screen. Where does the logo go? How big is it? As makers of technology, we're here to solve problems the most elegant ways possible. Our research allows us to identify new and unique problems to solve. Our creative drive to discover what motivates our customers is a fantastic way to start, but then so often we commit the common terrible mistake. We learn fascinating things, and then we draw a lazy rectangle. We start asking what generic pattern libraries we should use, and toss in a parallax scroll, or whatever is trendy at the moment, like the hamburger icon. We end up asking questions like, how can we help this 82-year-old diabetes patient using this form field? Unique problems don't have generic answers. Yes, in some cases, a graphical user interface is a decent solution. But so often we throw away our best stuff, our opportunity to do something new and different the very moment the marker hits whiteboard. Before we can even solve a problem meaningfully, we throw away the opportunity to do something better. Digital products can do so much more than have a fancy front end. Even if your company's core product is an interface, not everything that comes after has to be an interface. If things were that rigid, Apple Computer, the personal computer company, would have never become Apple Inc., the world's largest consumer electronics company. If companies didn't go after opportunities beyond what they do today, Netflix would still be mailing DVDs in red envelopes. Great thinkers adapt. Great companies offer their customers the best possible solutions, whether they have a graphical user interface or not. Alan Cooper, who brought user research to the software world back in 1992, once wrote to technologists, "Our most effective tool is profoundly simple. Develop a precise description of our user and what he wishes to accomplish. What he wishes to accomplish is rarely to use a menu, a drop-down, or other outcomes of lazy rectangles." That section is talking about the first principle of the book, which is to embrace typical processes instead of screens. This is video footage of Dr. Michael Rothberg. A number of years ago, something had happened to Dr. Rothberg, an undocumented psychological experience. He wondered if anybody else had had that experience happen to them. So he designed a survey for the medical staff in the hospital he worked in Massachusetts. And he found that an astounding 68% of the other medical staff that had that same experience happen to them. He published the results of the study in a medical journal, and a year later, it was repeated to undergraduate students. This time they found that 90% of undergraduate students that had that same psychological experience happened to them. Well, was it what plagued Dr. Rothberg and clearly so many other people? Something called ringxiety, or phantom vibration syndrome, which the idea that your phone is buzzing and beeping when it's not. It's no surprise that this happens to so many people. A few years ago, the venture capitalist Kleiner Perkins found that people get about 150 notifications per day. A study done earlier this year in the UK found that people check their phones over 200 times a day on average. It's all these addictive services looking for more taps and clicks, screaming, "Let me out, take me out of your pocket, use me." But I think there's a different approach, there's a better way of making technology. This is the original icon for the Moves app. Visually, it's not stunning, but conceptually, something really fascinating about this app icon. It shows a picture of a phone in a pocket. Unlike all the other services that want you to pull your phone out of your pocket, this one communicated that we want to be in your pocket. We're a sort of back pocket app. Now, the Moves app was one of the first digital pedometers, so when you walked around to count a number of your steps and where you went. But to get any real value out of the Moves app, you unfortunately had to look at this large data dashboard, and it wasn't really that useful for anybody. But take a different problem. Losing your keys, it happens to a lot of people. So there was a startup called Lockatron that said, well, we can make an app for that. They had made this door lock cover that goes over your deadbolt, and an app that has this giant unlock or lock button. From a UI perspective, this is totally fine. But from a user experience perspective, they realized something was a little bit off about their 1.0. The actual experience looks a little like this. First, you walk up to your house or apartment door and you want to open it. Second, you want to open your door, so you pull your phone out of your pocket. Third, you want to open your door, so you wake up your phone. Fourth, given where iOS was in their 1.0, you want to open your door, so you slide to unlock. Fifth, you want to open your door, so you enter your PIN code. Sixth, you want to open your door, so you hit the home button to exit your last open app. 7, you want to open your door, so you hit the home button to exit your last open group. 8, you want to open your door, so you swipe through a sea of icons. Try to find the Lockatron app. 9, you want to open your door, so you tap the Lockatron app. 10, you want to open your door, so you wait for the Lockatron app to load. 11, you want to open your door, so you hit this giant unlock button. 12, you want to open your door, so you open your door. They looked at this and they thought, well, something's off about the user experience here. Can we do something better? Can we embrace this idea that the best interface is no interface? Can we actually get rid of all those steps that have to do with the screen? And when they looked at it this way, when they looked at how they can try to embrace a typical process instead of a screen, they thought, actually, yeah, we can. We can just put a Bluetooth radio into our deadbolt cover, turn on Bluetooth into our app, and when you walk up to your door, deadbolt just opens. It's a back pocket app. It's an app that delights you while it just sits in your pocket. They went from screen-based thinking, the kind of stuff we've been doing for the last few decades, to screenless thinking, where I think we're headed in technology. After they showed that video on Kickstarter, they generated over $2 million. That's really good for a door lock. There are other companies who have experimented with this idea of having a back pocket app. Square had this feature you could turn on called Auto Tab. You could opt in for cafes or restaurants you frequented. When you walked up to the restaurant, your name popped up behind on the register, along with your most recent orders. And when it came time to pay and you were close to the register, your picture showed up. And when it was time to pay, the cashier could just hit your picture to have you pay. You never took your phone out of your pocket as a customer. It was a back pocket app for payment. There's a startup called Ginger.io. They work on a number of healthcare solutions. One of them is a back pocket app for people who suffer from severe depression. Instead of asking and every day and buzzing and beeping, and asking people how they feel on scales of 1 through 10, what Ginger.io did is they looked at passive data. They looked at when you were waking up, if you were calling your friends and family. They looked at your kind of activity throughout the course of the day and looked for those particular triggers for these patients to indicate whether they were suffering from severe depression or not. It was an app that worked while it just sits in your pocket. When Ginger.io compared actual survey data versus their passive data, actual survey data is shown here in a blue line 3 times a day, and in a red line, their passive data. They realized that their passive data was able to predict and be accurate about the symptoms and indications of depression almost better than asking somebody how they felt. Uber doesn't have a completely back pocket app, but one part of it, the payment model, is. When you just arrive at your destination, you just get out. There's no credit card, cash exchange. Uber says that this is actually a key component, that this cashless moment is something that a lot of people talk about when they talk about what they enjoy out of Uber. Built with incredible computational muscle, born with the ability to access its own exact location anywhere in the world, created with the innate thinking process to provide more timely and richer knowledge than an entire public library in a millisecond, formed to remember a generation of enlightenment, computing devices have largely and sadly turned into us at our worst, the terrible twos. A state of life where we are an emotional wreck, struggling with rules and responding to unexpectedness with simple variations of a single word expressed through a limited vocabulary. No, no, no. Know your username is not valid. No Chase Bank Online requires numbers in your name. Know your name isn't unique enough for Gmail. Pick another name. No, you can't leave that blank. You need to give us your title, Dr., Mr., or Mrs. It is mandatory at the London Heathrow Airport to connect to Wi-Fi. No, your password is not strong enough. No, it's not long enough. No, it needs an uppercase letter. No, it needs a punctuation mark. No, not that one. No, you cannot use one of your last 20 previous passwords on JetBlue. No, dates have to be MMDDYYYY at the New York Times Online Archive, not MMDDYY. No, I don't care if it'll be another 100 years until that matters again. No, these fields are required. Do it now, or I will turn red with rage. That section of the book is talking about the second principle of the best interface is no interface, which is to leverage computers instead of serving them. If you go to the Smithsonian museums in Washington, D.C., you'll see some of our greatest collections. Inside, you'll also see a supercomputer, IBM's Deep Blue. It's famous, of course, because in 1997, it beat the world's greatest chess player at a game of chess. We knew at the time that computers could outthink us in certain mathematical formulas. But to outthink us strategically, that was something new. And that incredible algorithms and incredible processing power of the supercomputer really revolutionized how we thought about computing technology. But when you compare the processors that were in Deep Blue to the machines that we dread today, the machines that collect dust in the corner that we want to smash up and maybe even just throw out the window, compared to these terrible machines, Deep Blue doesn't actually even stand a chance in processing power. We made incredible leaps forward in back-end technology. Yet, we still live in this world where we serve computers for really meaningless things. I think we can reverse that relationship. I think we can make computer systems that serve us. This is some highlight footage of Junior Seau. He's an American football player played in the 90s and early 2000s, known for his really big, hard hits. But what made Junior really great was what he did off the field. He volunteered for thousands of hours. Here he is receiving a presidential award. He had a restaurant that he opened on Thanksgiving for families of domestic abuse. One time when a crazy drunk fan tackled Junior from the stands and Junior got up, he helped the fan up, he never pressed charges, he wished him Merry Christmas. Another time when a soldier saw Junior Seau in a restaurant, he thanked Junior for his incredible play on the field. Junior inverted the flattery. He thanked the soldier for his service. He paid for the soldier's dinner. Then Junior went to his own car, grabbed a ukulele, came back in the restaurant, and serenaded the soldier by playing him Brown-Eyed Girl. He was this incredibly fun-loving, selfless person. But in the last few years of his life, something strange started happening to Junior. He started getting this deep, deep anxiety. He started becoming secluded. And it really shocked the world when Junior shot himself in the chest and committed suicide. After he died, his family ordered an autopsy on his body, and they discovered that he had been suffering from a brain disease called CTE. It's something that happens from all those hard hits in American football, in boxing, and sports similar. And it can lead to the kind of anxiety that Junior had. Actually, in federal court, the National Football League has admitted that up to a third of former players might end up in similar situations. This is even scarier when you go at a younger level, where even elite college players rarely ever report concussions. So, the Center for Disease Control in the US has tried to solve this by making an app for that. It's called Heads Up. It's a glorified brochure, and it does absolutely nothing for the problem. Other companies have done more interesting things to try to reverse this relationship between us and computers. This is a Reebok check light. It's a skull cap, something that people already wear underneath their helmets. And you can see this mom checking it on her son here. And it's got this flashing, it's a really, really simple computer. It's got this flashing LED light that flashes green every now and then when everything's fine. And when a really big, hard hit happens, it flashes red. It's a really cheap, really, really simple computer. Far cheaper and far more simple than anything we have in our pockets. But what's amazing about it is that it lets a player, a coach, a parent know when it's time to pull a player off the field. It's not going to completely prevent CTE, but it's going to provide those early warning signs through a really simple computer system that just works within the process that we already use. Today, there's a new kind of chore, a new set of numerous mindless errands embedded into our already overwhelmingly busy lives. Over the past decade, these tiny requests have been culminating to a larger and larger ball of more and more of our time, taking us farther and farther away from spending more time with our friends and family, or allowing us the free time to make our community stronger by volunteering. These tasks are the result of graphical user interfaces that assume constant demanding attention as the expected norm. They are the byproduct of screen-based thinking, first-world errands for the almighty computer and the apparent productivity software we have to manage. From their roots in delight, harmlessness, you've got mail. They've grown to an endless stream of to-dos and checklists. As our lives continue to become increasingly digital, these tasks have exponentially increased because the standard paradigm making new software is that we serve the computer, that we live to click. As each old world thing turns digital, the software has more and more requests for you. On a given day, you could have software updates to download and install, passwords to reset, notifications to attend to, files and folders to sort, messages to archive, social media requests to confirm, calendars to update, credit card balances to check, information to verify, storage space to manage and monitor, documents to back up, messages to reply to, photos to upload, flights to check in. These are digital chores, the maintenance of our digital lives. Oh, a new version of the operating system is available? Yes, I'd love to download it for the next few hours. These digital chores are nightly, weekly, and monthly errands that can feel just as mundane and forced as taking out the trash. Sometimes they have even worse consequences than traditional chores. Before, you forgot to do the laundry and you had to wear an old shirt. Now you forget to accept a request and your friend may not be your friend anymore. You forget to change your password, your account can get hacked, and you can lose all your private pictures. Or maybe even all your friends all get porn in their inboxes attributed to you. No, I swear that's not my dick pic. There's some people who are chipping away at these digital chores, who are trying to do the inverse of what everyone else is doing, and try to reduce the amount of time we spend on a computer. There's services that a lot of people know about, like If This Then That, which have these hacker-like recipes to help you reduce the amount of time you need to spend in front of a screen. There's services, startups like Unroll Me, which try to group your email together. There's a startup called X.AI, which you can CC in your emails to set up calendar invites for you. There are other people who are taking things to the third principle of the book, which is to create a system that adapts for individuals, probably the hardest part of the book. There's a startup that's trying to tackle a problem around saving money, something a lot of people are pretty bad at doing. It plugs into your checking account, and it looks at the way you spend your money. Over time, it starts moving some of your money from your checking account into your savings account as it slowly gets to know you better and better. Digit doesn't have an app. It doesn't bother you every day with goals and notifications. It just, in the background, seamlessly tries to solve a meaningful problem. It does what computers can do best for us. There's another financial startup that launched also this year called Even. It tries to solve a problem for people who have financial insecurity around uneven paychecks, people who work freelance or hourly, and that financial insecurity doesn't allow them to plan for the future. So what Even does is it looks at what your paychecks you're receiving are and tries to find an average. It tries to deliver you an even paycheck once every 2 weeks. If you make a little more than your average, it saves that money and delivers it at times in which you make a little less. I first wrote about Best Interfaces, No Interface way back in 2012, and it's gotten a lot of really interesting reactions since I did. There have been some people who have positively reacted to the idea. There have been others who have negatively reacted to the idea. This is a piece called No to No UI, which is about how what I'm talking about doesn't really make a lot of sense. There are other people who have criticized this by saying, well, the word interface could mean a lot of different things by dictionary definition, but of course I'm just using shorthand of graphical user interface like most major media sources do today. There's some people who ask more interesting questions, like what happens when these systems fail? What happens when these sort of automatic perfect things running in the background that adapt for individuals fall apart? And I think any great system always thinks and considers about failure. Even automatic sliding doors often have a push to open feature in case the power goes out. One thing I'm seeing people do as they start to embrace these ideas is they're shifting user interfaces from the primary experience to the secondary experience, using it as sort of a backup. This is a headlamp that a company called Petzl makes. It's popular for people who do cave search and rescue. They're holding on to these ropes, and when they look in these deep, dark caves, the light brightens. When they look at a map, the light dims. So it doesn't whitewash the map, and they can still see. But if Petzl's settings aren't right, it comes with a piece of software where you can adjust the automatic settings to the right range that you want. It's not the primary experience to work with the software. It's the secondary experience. It's a more advanced case. Some people talk about the idea of the Nest thermostat when they think about these kinds of ideas. And the Nest thermostat is interesting because once it learns your behaviors, it just automatically sets the temperature in your house. But in case it's off, it always has this enormous graphical user interface that you can use to reteach it new things. Sometimes people ask questions around privacy. What happens when these services are watching our everyday activity and try to balance their solutions around our needs? I think there are a lot of interesting answers to this. One of them that I see in Microsoft's Cortana is this really clear settings menu. So you don't deal with the UI on an everyday basis, but when you do, you can go to the settings menu where you can just clear all the personal information it knows about you. It has this really transparent language, like track my flights through my email, check, uncheck. I think there's something really nice about that kind of transparency in settings. Other people, when they talk about this idea, they talk about something called minimum viable data, which means using the smallest amount of data you need to execute this kind of solution. So you wouldn't need to collect everything about a person. Rather, just the small bits, the least amount of bits you need to deliver the kind of no UI experience you're aiming for. Sometimes people ask how. How do we do this sort of crazy shift from what we've been doing for the last 3-ish decades in technology to shifting to this sort of screenless thinking? And now I've written, of course, this book about it, but also I put together this toolkit online which talks about the sensors that are common in our phones, the radios that are common in our phones, and the kinds of things you can do with them to create meaningful solutions. I'm going to read from the last chapter of the book to wrap up this talk. One day, I hope you think this book is utterly boring, passé, and that you hear about the idea of screenless solutions and yawn. The best interface is no interface? Wake me up when you have something interesting to say. Because if that day comes, remember to celebrate. You'll be living in a better time. Not one drowning in screens with intentionally addictive interfaces that distract us from one another, but one in which typical processes are embraced. When computers serve us instead of us serving them. A day, probably a few decades from now, when children dress up as their grandparents on Halloween by sticking smartphones to their faces. Look, I'm like Grandpa who stares at his giant phone all day. That day will be joyous. I hope that today's marvel becomes tomorrow's mundane. That no UI is like watching a rerun of Friends. But that day may not come. This book is just a journey into one possible future. Some of the companies I've mentioned towards taking us to that future may have already disappeared by the time you've read this book. If there's enough dust on the cover of your copy, some of the examples in this text may feel ancient. But I hope the ideas in this book aren't forgotten. They end up as stepping stones to something far greater, a future in which the best case of a graphical user interface has been understood as no interface. Along the way, there'll be battles to be fought inside companies and classrooms, privacy issues to tackle, and other unforeseen hurdles. When the philosophies settle, the debaters come to agreement, the doers understand how to get it done, and the business plans start to fall into place, we could have something utterly revolutionary in our hands. And when that revolution finally comes to fruition, we may think of it as the most boring, expected solution. No screens? Tell me something I don't know. Here's the hoping for that boredom. Thank you.